Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Barbecue Problem. I'm here with my sister Ashley at her home in Mesa, Arizona. I hope you guys are enjoying the 4th of July festivities and the holiday weekend. We certainly are. And so today, Ashley is going to show us how to make some of her famous apple pie on the Traeger. Ashley, take us out. Show us what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah. So for the apple pie, it's going to be about 8 hours in total. A lot of that's going to be refrigerate time. We're going to start with the pie crust. We are making a butter pie crust today.
Is the butter pie crust just something that you do, or is that typical of apple pies?
I don't necessarily know that it's typical of apple pies, but there are multiple pie crust recipes out there. The butter pie crust just means that you're going to end up having a lot more butter, a lot more flakiness to that crust. And I mean, butter makes everything great. So you'll have little bits of butter in your crust as you roll it out, and you'll get little bites of that once it's baked. And
Flashes of greatness.
yeah, it's pretty delicious.
All right, awesome.
So what we need to make this butter pie crust is we're going to need 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, half a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 4 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, and ice water, as well as a stick and a half of frozen unsalted butter.
Why do you have your apple cider vinegar in a glass of ice?
Great question. So the pie crust requires the apple cider vinegar, but it also requires a little bit of water to get the mixture combined. And the best crust is usually made with the coldest butter you can find, and using that cold water to combine the ingredients keeps that coldness in the mixture.
Gotcha. Okay.
First, we'll start with whisking all of our dry ingredients together. Anytime you bake anything, you want to add all your dry ingredients as dry ingredients and whisk them thoroughly.
You want to do that first?
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, go for it.
It's going to be my first apple pie, y'all, so bear with us. Luckily, I've got the assistance of an expert.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and cut up the butter. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you take your butter and cut it up into roughly about half a teaspoon in chunks, just so that you don't put a huge piece in the processor. It makes it mix up a lot quicker. So I set aside the extra half a stick of butter, which we don't need. This recipe, again, calls for a stick and a half of butter. And then we'll go ahead and slice this up. And then...
How long do I whisk this? Is this good?
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
You basically just whisk long enough to get all of the ingredients combined. So next, we're going to go ahead and put the flour in the food processor. We're going to go ahead and drop the lid on that. Pull this little guy out. And then we're just going to put the butter in the food processor a little bit at a time and hit it on pulse.
Why are you pulsing it? Why can't you just hit the run button? Why aren't we doing it on high speed?
Yeah, great question. Because you don't want to totally pulverize the butter. Remember, you want to have like little chunks of butter in there at the end. So by pulsing it, you're only giving it as much processing power as you're pressing that pulse button.
Oh, okay.
Whereas if you put it on high, it'll
So you're
just go.
controlling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Much more eloquent way of saying.
Have you always made your own pie crust?
I have tried a frozen pie. I was not impressed. And then I went down the journey of trying to find the best pie crust recipe. This is the one I settled on, and
now we're sharing with all you guys, so
never had any complaints.
You're welcome.
All right, so now that we're done with that, we're gonna go ahead and use this apple cider vinegar mixture. Now, one thing I want to note is I filled the cup up with ice and put 4 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar in here. As we've been sitting here, the ice has melted a little bit, and I'm gonna just go to the fridge and tap a little bit more water in there. We didn't want to put the water in at the beginning because we don't want it to get too watered down, because that apple cider
vinegar. Is there a certain amount of water, like quarter of a cup, half a cup of water, or is it like a feel thing?
It's kind of a feel thing, to be honest with you. So you want to start with the minimum amount possible. At the least, you want to have a tablespoon of water. That's because you're going to need the 4 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar and a tablespoon of water at least to get this started.
So we're just keeping an eye on the consistency of the mixture.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So now we have our water here, and we're just going to pour a little bit here. If you get some ice cubes in there, it's not a problem. It melts down.
So what kind of consistency are you looking for with this?
We're looking for it to be slightly crumbly, but combined a little bit. So we'll put the camera over.
So you're not
and
looking for like a soupy mixture.
Oh, no.
It's not supposed to look like pancake batter.
No, definitely not pancake batter. So you want it to be mixed enough that it looks like it's kind of starting to form a dough. But what is actually going to happen is you're going to be pressing it. We're gonna dump it out. We're going to put it together, knead it together into a ball, refrigerate it, and then come back later and roll it out. And that refrigeration piece is going to be key to it becoming that dough.
Gotcha.
All right, so this is the consistency that we're looking for with this. You see you have little pieces of butter throughout. It looks like it could combine if you just compress it a little bit. And so that's what you're looking for, because that's our next step. All right, so now we're going to take the mixture out of the food processor and dump it on the counter. And we're going to compress it into a bowl, get it nice and put together, wrap it up, and put it in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours. You can do it overnight. That's always helpful if you're making several pies. This crust will actually be able to split up, and you can make a top and a bottom, or you can make 2 separate pies.
So I don't need a spatula, just dump it out?
Just dump it out. All right, notice how it's still falling down a little bit?
Yeah.
And it's a nice crumbly consistency. Can you see the little pieces of butter that are in there?
I can now.
Yeah. So
cool.
We're going to take that, just compress it up into a ball. There's no like kneading it like it's bread or anything like that. You just want to pack it up, pack it in, and then we're going to roll it up. I like to cover my counter with the cellophane so that when I'm done rolling it up, I can just fold it over on top, and I also have an easy clean situation when I'm done.
Is this packed enough, or do I need to pack it more?
That's packed. That's pretty good. So go ahead and
Easy.
Yep. Toss it in there, wrap her up. So now it's all ready to go in the fridge. Put it in for at least 2 hours, overnight if you'd like.
All right, guys, so we're back. We've got our pie dough chilling in the refrigerator, and we're getting ready to start working on the filling. Ashley, one thing I love about your apple pie that you cook on the Traeger is that smoky flavor that I get when I bite into the pie. So how are we going to make that happen here? What are we doing next?
Sure. So one thing to note is we're using 2 different apples, different types of apples. This is a Honeycrisp apple, and this is what we're going to start with because it's a little bit of a heartier apple. And we'll be able to put this on the grill, get that good smoke flavor. Okay. And then we'll bring in the green apples here in a little bit to create.
How are we gonna put these on the grill?
Yeah, so we are going to peel these. We're going to slice them up. We're going to baste them with a mixture of butter and cinnamon. Okay. And then we're going to put them on the Traeger at a low temperature of 275.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let's get started. If you want to start peeling those, I'll just mix this in here. We also have like a basting brush. If you don't have a basting brush at hand, you can always use a paper towel. I've used that in the past, and it's just fine. And we used half a teaspoon of cinnamon in this butter. So one thing we do want to make sure we do is cut the apple in fairly large slices now, so that when we put it on the grill, we have something to work with. When we take it off the grill, we're going to chop it into smaller pieces so that it fits in the apple.
But this will make it so it doesn't fall through the grate?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, so next we'll see you out there at the grill where we're gonna throw these pieces of apple on to get that smoke flavor infused. All right, we'll see you soon.
All right, guys. So we're gonna take these apples, toss them on the grill. We're gonna keep them on for about 20 minutes. Every 5 minutes, we're gonna flip them and baste them with this cinnamon butter that we have. All right, let's get started. All right, we're gonna let them go for about 5 minutes, and we'll be back shortly. All right, well, it's been 5 minutes. Here we go. We're gonna start flipping them. All right, now that they're all flipped, we're gonna go ahead and baste them again. All right, another 5 minutes. Here we go.
All right, so we just pulled the apples off of the Traeger. These came out absolutely beautiful. All right, guys, so Ashley's about to get the stove ready to get those apples sauteing or getting the juice out. And I'm gonna work on getting these apples that were smoked on the Traeger cut up and prepared for the next step. So here we go.
All right, here we go. So we're gonna toss in these smoked apples now that the Granny Smiths are partially cooked.
That smells delicious.
Yeah, you can really smell the smoke flavor, which is really nice. So we're gonna let this cook down a little bit longer, get the juices out of that smoke flavor, which is also gonna infuse into that sugar goodness that we have in there. So we'll let that cook, and then we'll add some additional seasonings.
Cool.
All right, so here in just a second, I'm gonna pull these apples out, and then because we have a nice smoky flavor, we're gonna add a little bit more sugar, and we're gonna add the cinnamon, allspice, and nutmeg. So we have a teaspoon of cinnamon, a fourth a teaspoon of allspice, and a pinch of nutmeg here. And then my secret ingredient is a dash of cayenne pepper. That cayenne pepper really pulls in, it's just magical. I don't know what to tell you. It's just amazing. So a dash, too much goes, makes the pie actually spicy, so you don't want to do that. But just a dash would pull out that cinnamon and just really like open that flavor. So I'm gonna pull out these apples here in just a second. So pulling the apples out and leaving the juices in the pan, because our next step is to add all those additional ingredients and then let this sauce thicken. Thick apple pie, gooey filling that everybody loves so much. So now we're gonna add a little bit more sugar. This is 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 1 tablespoon brown sugar. So we're gonna add that in here. Add our combination of cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice. Just gonna give that a little mix. Make sure we still have high heat. And then here we're gonna let this simmer until it thickens up. Add in this dash of cayenne. Not a lot, but a little goes a long way. All right, so our sauce has cooled down a little bit, and now we're gonna go ahead and mix the apples and the sauce mixture, and then we're gonna toss that in the refrigerator while we work on the pie crust. So what you wanna make sure you do when you pour the sauce in with the apples is fold the sauce in so that you don't crush the apples or mush them up. And the sauce, when you taste it, you should get a hint of, obviously, the cinnamon, nutmeg, and all of that. And then, but you should also get a hint of lemon, and then you might even get a little hint of that cayenne. It all comes together really nicely. And you fold it just like that. And we'll put a lid on it, pop it in the fridge, and then we'll be right back to do the pie crust and get started with the bake on the Traeger.
All right, so we just took our chilled dough out of the refrigerator that's been in there for several hours, and we're gonna roll it out. And what's the process, Ashley? Walk us through it.
Sure. All right. So first things first, you want to flour your countertop. Make sure your counter is nice and clean. And put some flour on the countertop. This is what prevents that dough from sticking. So just get a nice coverage there. And then unwrap that dough. Toss it on there. Again, this is going to be 2 pie crusts worth of dough. You'll want to have a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can always use a cup, like a beer glass, that's nice and round and smooth. So you're going to roll it out. Generally, when you roll it, you want to go in both directions in even amounts so that you get a good solid circle. This pie crust is going to make 2 pies worth of crust, or a top and a bottom layer. This pie that we're making tonight is actually going to have a crumble crust on top. So we're going to have an extra amount of dough if we're going to make a second pie. And then another thing that's really helpful is if you want to make sure, just slightly sprinkle the flour on the rolling pin. Notice it's been sticking a little bit to that. So we'll just slightly flour that little guy. There you go. Keep on going a little bit more, probably till it's about a third of the size larger than what you have right now.
Okay.
What's interesting too here is you see all the marbling of butter
Oh yeah.
that's in there. That's how you know it's going to be a good crust. Oh, that's butter.
Butter makes everything better.
Oh yeah, it's a butter and bacon.
Yeah,
you
butter
can't
and
go wrong.
bacon.
All right, so that's perfect the way it is. So our next step is we're gonna pull in that pie plate, and you notice how much larger this is than the pie plate.
Yeah.
One thing to be clear, when you roll it out, this is 2 pies worth, but like you're not actually gonna have like that amount of crust. You can't like put 2 pie plates on there.
Okay.
You know,
So
so what's left over would be enough to make
Gotcha.
another one.
Okay.
All
How do I
right,
do
so we're gonna set that aside for a second, and then we're gonna work on getting the crust off the counter,
this? Okay.
and you're just gonna kind of flip it on to the pie
Pie
plate. Yeah. You just want to work it all the way around first to make sure it's not sticking anywhere. If you do it too quickly, you could end up with like pulling a hole or something like that. So.
Just like that.
Yep.
Oh. Sorry.
You're good. No, you're good. You're good. Keep going. Just flip it all on there. Get it all on there. Once we have it fully covered, we want to make sure it's like nice and tucked into all of the corners and creases of the pie plate. And then I have a secret little trick for you to get all that excess off. And then you want to make sure the corners are all tucked in, because I think it goes without saying, everybody likes that nice little corner, so you gotta get that tucked in. And like what you just did, you lifted it up and let it feed itself back into the sides. That ensures that you have a nice solid crust against the walls, which means it's not going to pool away.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's perfect what you just did. All right, so now take this and we'll roll it across the whole top with some pressure. It's going to cut away all that excess for you.
Oh.
It's just kind of a shortcut. Nice shortcut. And then we'll make that pretty after we're done. Yep, so in all the little spots where you have like the little dents, just make a little pinch.
Alright, how's that looking, Ashley?
That's beautiful.
Okay.
All right, so the next step is to pull a piece of parchment paper in there. And then what you need are like dry beans or pie weights. There's something actually called pie weight you can purchase, but I just use dry kidney beans. You're gonna dump those in there. What we're gonna do next is partially bake the pie crust.
The whole bag.
Yeah, the whole bag is fine. And when you partially bake a pie crust, you need to weigh the pie crust down so that you don't get any air bubbles. Because that crust is kind of like that beautiful flaky crust, it's going to kind of do what you would expect a croissant or something to do. It's going to start flaking up and making beautiful flaky layers. When that happens, it creates air. So by adding the weights here, we're making sure that that pie crust is going to stay adhered to the pie plate itself, and then we have a perfect spot for our filling. So we've had our oven heated up to 350. For this, we are just going to use the traditional oven, and then once we get the filling in, we'll hop over to the Traeger. And then mix that up a little bit, and then toss it in there. See how like the top is already...
Oh yeah.
All right, so we're gonna bake this in the Traeger for about 15 minutes. While that's baking, we'll make the streusel topping, and then we'll put that back, we'll finish it in the oven.
All right, so actually we've got the pie out there on the Traeger, cooking for 15 minutes, catching smoke. We've got these different ingredients. What are we getting ready to make here? What are we doing?
Yeah, so as we said before, this is going to be a streusel topped apple pie.
Okay.
And so in order to do that, we need 6 tablespoons of butter, 3/4 cup of brown sugar. We're using dark brown sugar. You can use light brown sugar. And then a cup of all-purpose flour, and we have 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt already topped in this well. So we're going to put all of this into the food processor, let it combine, creates like a little crumbly concoction, and then
Sweet.
we'll top the pie with that and we'll put it in the oven.
Cool.
So
Okay.
basically we want it to be something that we can pick up, sprinkle. It is going to be packed and crumbly. It's almost going to be still the consistency of a brown sugar.
Oh, okay.
But with that butter mixed into it, that butter allows it to really kind of like melt down and cook and create a frosting on the pie.
Awesome. Wonder how we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah. The flour, of course, also will help it to do that by baking.
Okay, cool.
All right. So let's go pull that pie off the Traeger, top it with the streusel, and pop it in the oven.
Let's do it.
That looks gorgeous. So we want to make sure we get that streusel topping from edge to edge. Now we're going to pop that back in the oven to cook off the streusel for another 35 minutes. And got a little sugar on the bottom of the oven, not to know what it is, but so that's that golden brown I'm looking for. That's pretty much the perfect bake. And yeah, we'll let it cool for about 2 hours. You can serve it after it's cooled. We're gonna let it cool all night and enjoy it for the 4th of July.
Hey guys, happy 4th of July. So we're back. We made my sister's famous apple pie on the Traeger. I've got some guests with us today. My dad, this is his birthday. He's actually a 4th of July born baby. And a true patriot. The man served in Vietnam. He spent 23 years serving our great country. And he's going to be our glorified taste tester today to see how this all turned out. So here we go. All right, guys, clearly I don't serve up a whole lot of pies. That's why it's my sister's famous recipe, not necessarily mine. Well, let's see what he's got to say about it. Happy birthday, Dad.
Thank you. Very good. Taste the smoke. The apple flavor is solid, really good. And I love the crunch.
There you go. There you have it. Better and improved. Happy 4th of July, guys.